Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist here in Las Vegas, and I guess we can say happy football season. I'm joined today by Joe Mac. Joe is in New York, and Joe, you've gone through a lot in New York. We're going through a lot in the country. The pandemic is in charge, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing or what the right way to fight it is. So you have the arguments on both sides of the fence, and I have no idea what the right way to go is. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a politician, thank God. And I'm not going to make comments on it because I really don't know what the right way to go is. I hope you're healthy. I hope your family is healthy. And we do have some sports. We went through about 4 months of no U.S. sports until the UFC came along and saved us a little bit, and then, of course, we had golf. None of it is with fans, but I don't think that matters much. And now the NBA is doing pretty well with this bubble thing they got going on. I'll tell you what, I've never been a big fan of the NBA. I'm more of a college basketball guy, but I'm enjoying watching these games, and some of these games are tight. I mean, last night was an in and out at the buzzer. One team goes home, one team moves on. Great. There's been great performance. Luka Doncic. You got Murray. You got Mitchell for, Denver and Utah, respectively. And there's been some unbelievable basketball. And there's a lot of talent. Of course, we have the race issues and the riots and the pandemic and the economic stuff and the fires all over, and then the hurricanes. This has been, 2020 is the year, I think, at the end of the day, unless you're Jeff Bezos or somebody in that tax bracket, you're going to probably look back and say, damn, I wish we could have skipped that year. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that you and yours are healthy, and yes, thank you for asking. Everybody here is fine, but I don't know, who was it, the Grateful Dead with that song, What a Long Strange Trip It's Been? I mean, I was just looking up on the computer, and you and I did a podcast, I think it was March 10th or 9th or something, so it's been a while, and certainly a lot has happened in this country during that time, but you know what, just to stick to the sports part, because I guess we feel that's our expertise, it is, it's good that the NBA came back. Good that baseball comes back. Baseball has obviously had a lot of issues with COVID, and now you've got the Oakland A's, Seattle Mariners series, hitting the pause button and whatnot. But you know what? I'm glad they're back. I mean, I guess from a selfish point of view, we want our sports and everything, and the NBA has been thoroughly entertaining. I have to say that. Last night, as you said, the Jazz have to be just kicking themselves, blowing a 3-1 lead, and it's funny, all during that series, I kept thinking, if the Jazz blow this series, it's going to be game one that they look back on as they lost in overtime. And that's what happens a lot in these series, where when things are tight, you can go back to a game early in the series, game one, game two, and you realize that's what really cost you the series. But anyway, it's great that the NBA is back. Got some hockey action, too. Got a local team for us here in the Islanders, who are really the second banana in town behind the Rangers, as everyone knows in hockey, but they've given everybody a nice run. So it's good that the sports are back, and, I wasn't wild about the baseball, basically on the eve of the season, deciding they were going to expand the playoffs, but tell you the truth, as we're about, 5 weeks into this very shortened season, I'm kind of glad about it. I think it does stir a little more interest. Obviously, you're going to get a 500 or below 500 team in the playoffs, maybe even in both leagues. But I'm kind of glad that they went that way. And like you said, this has been such a wild year on so many fronts more important than sports. But it's really been a crazy year in the sports world here. And at least they're back and they're playing. And heck, we're already into, as they say, the stretch run in baseball. And right now, I guess the $64,000 question is anyone going to beat this Dodgers team that just keeps rampaging along? 3-game winning streak, 27-10 on the year. I have to admit, I like their under total for the wins total. It was 38 or 37.5, depending on when you put it in. But they're going to cruise over that total, so that's going to be a big X against me. But right now, they're the class of baseball, and we're going to see who the class of the NBA is here as we get a little deeper into these playoffs. We've got Bucks and Heat, and we've got the other series going. The Celtics are shocking the Raptors right now. I mean, small upsets, albeit, but still, I'm very surprised they're up 2-0, and I think we'll get some entertainment in the Western finals here with the Clippers getting ready to open up their series with Denver, and then you're going to have the Lakers getting the winner of this game that we've got going tonight, Rockets Thunder. So it's been entertaining, been high scoring. I tell you what, we've seen the coming of age of Jamal Murray on the Nuggets. He's a fantastic player. I knew he was a good shooter, but he's a great all-around player. And it's been a coming of age for a handful of guys in the NBA, so it's been exciting to watch. And I've been keeping track of the favorites and the dogs and whatnot, and the favorites were really kind of kicking butt for a while, but the gap has been closed. I see going into tonight, at least according to my records, favorites in the NBA playoffs are 24 and 15. No, let me update that. 24 and 18 with one push and one pick'em. So it's come back to the pack. Generally, we see that lots of times over the course of a season. It's close to 50-50 favorites, dogs, and that's what's happened. So anyway, now that I've rambled on and on, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the football that we've got coming. It's a very shortened schedule, obviously, for the college kids this weekend. 9 games, really 5 of them are just on the board now. But anyway, we've got a lot going on after, as you said, Jim, 4.5 to 5 months of nothing going on in sports, and now you've got a full menu. So there's a lot of excitement out there, and there's a lot of good viewing to do for folks who are still staying put at home.
Well, yeah, thank you for that, because that's a great overview. We also have tennis, we've got golf, we've got UFC. For a long while, we're betting soccer in Europe, which was good. We've even bet some Korean baseball. We found in Australian rules football, we found a way to fill our card, the betting card. Not everybody got involved, of course, and that was actually wise. I mean, it's kind of crazy to chase it. But, now we're having the battle with the divisions in college football as to what they're going to do, and college basketball is coming up close. And it's a battle between money and lives, really. You break it down. Yeah, you can't close everything down because then all the businesses fail. If you open everything up, you might make a little bit more money, but a lot more people will die. So making those decisions, I would not want to have to make those decisions. Very difficult. But we are moving forward with what we have. I'm very happy baseball is here. It's been very exciting. NBA, you mentioned the favorites and the dogs. Yeah, the favorites took off early because you're talking about the better teams against the weaker teams, and now we're getting it closed down to the better teams against the almost better teams, and so you're going to have more underdogs coming in for straight up upsets. I played the Celtics to beat Toronto in the first game, second game, and series. I'll probably switch course and go with Toronto. I think Nick Nurse is a great coach, obviously coach of the year. I think he'll make the adjustments, and you might get a little bit of a flat effort from Boston coming out 2-0. They might feel a little too good about themselves. That's a possibility. It does happen. It used to happen a lot more when you actually have home court, because there is no home court now. This is all neutral stuff in a bubble in Orlando, Florida. And you also have another bubble up the road in Bradenton with the WNBA, which is also going well. And then we got, like you said, we have some football. We don't know what's going to happen with football. There's a lot of cases out there. The pandemic, the virus, the COVID is affecting the college campuses. It's going to affect the kids too. Some of the kids that know they have a future moving forward into the pros, in my opinion, should not be risking anything. And that, if I was a parent, I would tell them not to risk anything, because they're talking about life-changing money, setting themselves up for life once they get into the pros. And that goes for basketball as well, or any amateur sport going into the potential going into the pros. They're not getting paid to play, other than their education. They're not getting paid to play, and it's not life changing unless you get a real good education and can, monetize that going forward. I would not be telling anybody to play. I'd be telling them not to play. Now, if you're a kid and you don't have an upside to go to pros and you want to take the risk, the problem is the young people are going to take risks that the wiser older people will not. So that's a difficult one. But I'm looking at. Let's go first to baseball. The New York Yankees. You mentioned the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are magnificent, playing well. We expected them to play well, but we also expected the Yankees to play well. Now, I know you know more about what's going on with the Yankees than anybody, but the injuries they have are amazing. I never felt that they developed their pitching staff well enough. And granted, they got Cole, and that was magnificent, but there was more to do, in my opinion. Now, they got the injuries on top of other issues, and right now they're struggling to keep up with Tampa. Now, in the beginning, I bet Tampa to win the East and to move on through the American League and end up in the World Series. I felt that was the best way to go, and it's working out right now. It's not over, of course. And, of course, there's a Yankee-Tampa game today, which is big. So what's going on with the Yankees, Joe?
Well, you really nailed it pretty good there, Jim. I mean, and the injuries, the Yankees had all these kind of injuries last year, and they still wound up being a 103 win type team. And so in some ways, the people, at least here in the tri-state area, they don't really want to hear any more about the injuries. But the fact of the matter is, they just can't keep Judge on the field. He plays, he comes back after a long break on the IL, and he gets hurt in the second game of a doubleheader. Stanton, forget it. He's impossible. He never plays. And the loss of LeMahieu, who came back and actually hit 2 home runs last night, the loss of LeMahieu really hurt him because he's really a very integral part of this team. Last year, to me, he should have been, top 2 of MVP in the league. So that hurt a lot, but I agree with you 100%. Okay, they went out and they spent $324 million on Garrett Cole, and honestly, he has really not looked good his last couple of starts. His velocity's down. The Braves pounded him a bit. Tampa Bay pounded him a bit, and he looks a little flustered in his last couple of starts. I know he's a high-quality pitcher, and he'll be okay, but that's a little concerning. But you're right; they did not develop behind it. I mean, Tanaka, they've kept fingers crossed that Masa Tanaka will stay healthy with his elbow stuff over the years. But the rest of the guys back there, they're the same type of thing. They're just wishing and hoping that guys like Montgomery and Happ can give them 5-6 innings every start. But they didn't do enough in the off-season, which was a very prolonged off-season, in helping out their pitching staff. And as good as the back end of the bullpen is, they've got some softness in the middle there. So what we're seeing right now, Jim, actually with a lot of teams, but with the Yankees it's been a problem. You get some of these starters, they go less than 5 innings, and you're getting into the bullpen guys. Now, you're not getting to Britton, who's hurt, or Chapman, who missed a bunch of games with COVID, or even Green, who's been a little on and off. You're not getting those, or even Ottavino. You're getting other guys like Holder and whatever, and those guys are getting hit. They're not high-quality guys. So the fact that they didn't stretch out what starting pitching they had is really coming home to roost against them. And right now, they've really been just kind of an average team for the last month or so. Their record going into tonight is 20-14. Tampa Bay's been in their head the whole time. Now they have a little beanball war going, it looks like, with the Rays, 2 teams that don't like each other. But the Yankees have really shown a lot of vulnerabilities, and all this talk at the start of the year of Yankee-Dodger, every prediction I saw had Yankee-Dodgers, and like I said, I thought the Dodgers were going to come back to the pack, but it's the Yankees that have come back to the pack. And, they've got a month to get things straightened out, but they didn't pull the trigger on any trade. There was talk they were looking for Johnny Cueto for San Francisco, but let's face it, the Giants are in the hunt now with the extra playoff spots. There was talk that they were going to, there was even some talk that they were going to go after Sonny Gray, who was a disaster here in New York, but that didn't happen. And so there's been a lot of criticism in the last 48 hours or so about the Yankees not making a move to improve their pitching. And I just don't, even with these short playoff series, 2 out of 3 or whatever, I don't think the Yankees have enough starting pitching to get them to their ace relievers, and I think that's going to be a problem. And I think eventually they're going to wind up they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't see them winning it. Your Tampa Bay team obviously looks very solid, and you know what? I keep wondering, is this finally going to be the year for the Oakland A's? I mean, they never seem to win these one-game playoffs, but this year, there's really, you can't criticize much about the A's right now. I mean, they're 13-4 at home, so if you want, you can say, well, they've been a 500 team on the road, which is 9-8. But I mean, they've played well. They've lost the last couple of games, but they look top to bottom right now. I would say, along with Tampa Bay, as the class of the American League, and I think the Yankees have taken a step or two back. And I might even say the Yankees are about the 4th or 5th best team, and they're going to regret not getting a little more starting pitching, I think.
When you say they're 4th or 5th best team in the American League, who would be the teams between Tampa and the Yankees, in your opinion?
Well, even though they've slumped a little bit, I think Minnesota, and I realize they've dropped to 3rd in the AL Central, but I think Minnesota, that they have so much thump in that lineup that I think it'll eventually come forward here. And I know the Yankees never lose to the Twins in the playoffs, but if I'm just ranking the teams right now in the American League, I think I would put it this way: Tampa 1, Oakland 2. I'm going to put Minnesota 3. And I'm going to put, even though the Indians are there, the Indians don't have a whole lot of pop. I'm going to put the White Sox ahead of the Yankees actually right now. I mean, you can look at it and say, hey, if it came down to one game, say the Yankees play the White Sox in some playoff round this year, if you get Lucas Giolito against Cole, you want to know something? I think my money would be on the White Sox in that game. So for right now, obviously, this stuff's always fluid. You can rank teams here and there. If you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have said the Yankees are in the top 2 or 3 of all of baseball. Now I think there's about 4 teams that are ahead of them. And I'll tell you what, with the moves that the Blue Jays made at the trade deadline, I mean, basically they imported almost 60% of a starting rotation right there with the moves that they made. And they needed to. I mean, they made a move in the offseason to get Ryu from the Dodgers, but they picked up 3 starters here. And I think the Blue Jays are certainly a team to watch. And I wouldn't be shocked if they were a kind of team that made a run here in the AL playoffs.
I agree with everything you said, but I think you didn't give enough credit to the Indians. I think that pitching staff that they have is devastating. And when you get into that need one game thing, boy, I'll tell you, they got some pitchers that can just shut you down.
No, they do. I mean, Bieber is, he's the slam dunk Cy Young winner in the American League now. He's been untouchable. I mean, the other night he walked 4 batters in 6 innings, but he struck out 9. I mean, his strikeout to walk ratio is out of control. I mean, he's been so dominant. And I agree. I mean, the Indians, look, they traded away Clevenger. Obviously, some of it was because of his problems with the COVID stuff, where he didn't fess up to his teammates and whatever. But you know what? They were going to get rid of him, from what I understand, this off season, because he was going to be, entering that period where he was going to get top dollar. And the Indians, as we know, really don't pay top dollar for their players. So I agree with you. The Indians pitching, and I'm always a pitching first guy. But you know what, Jim? That lineup is so anemic. I mean, I know they went off last night. It's a bad time for me to say it because they scored 10 runs, but they did face Matt Harvey last night, who's just absolutely awful. But I just don't trust the Indians' offense enough. Their outfielders, the production they get from that outfield is horrid. And to me, they rely too much on Lindor and Ramirez to carry them in. So I guess I could see them, like you said, they could be winning 2-1, 3-2 type games in the playoffs, but I could also see them losing those type of games. So I guess I skip them maybe to 6th in the league, even though they're playing a 6-11 ball right now. I'd still drop them down. I just don't trust their offense in a big spot against good pitchers.
You mentioned before the Giants being in the running. Last night they had a terrible time trying to score any runs.
Yes. When I wrote it in my book today, I said, am I writing in football scores or not? But I tell you what, I give them a lot of credit. I didn't think Gabe Kapler was the right guy for the job, and obviously it remains to be seen. They've played 37 games, but let's face it, they've exceeded expectations. They've won 3 in a row, 7 of the last 10. Their offense, they've got some bite finally. The last 2 years, they were just hungering for runs. And you know what? Maybe they did the right thing, hanging on to Cueto, hanging on to Gausman, because both those guys were supposedly on the trade market. They held tight, and you know what? With the expanded playoffs, like we said, a 500 or just sub 500 team could make it in the playoffs, and who knows? Hey, the Giants could finish with the 8th seed and play the Dodgers, and Cueto could pitch a 5-hitter in the first game, and all of a sudden the Dodgers are sitting here watching, potentially this great season go up in smoke. So anything can happen. I give the Giants a lot of credit. He was not the manager I would have hired in the off season, but right now he's doing manager of the year type work with the Giants.
Let's give 2 or 3 minutes to the NBA. It's been exciting. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a huge NBA guy, but I'll tell you what, they've converted me. Watching these games, of course, these are more meaningful games, and the one knock I have on the NBA is they play too many games in the regular season. Not enough of them mean anything. There's too much sitting and resting and all that stuff. Well, it's not happening now. So these games are amazing, and the talent is amazing. But right now, I still think the Clippers are the team to beat. I don't know what's going to happen with Miami and Milwaukee, but Miami has the right type of team, I feel, to beat Milwaukee because of their jump shooting, their great three-point shooting team. They got Butler at guard, who's playing amazing. And but Milwaukee has a lot of talent, and they had a great record coming into this thing. That's going to be exciting. I don't think Denver is going to give anybody a lot of trouble this next round because I think they wore themselves out, kind of like Portland did going through their amazing run through the playoff. So I think the Lakers and the Clippers are going to match up some point down the road. And in the East, it's a little bit more mixed. But I'm a big fan of right now the Celtics and Miami. I have money on both of them. Both would require upsets going further, but I think that might happen.
You know what? I'll tell you one thing. I didn't hear it brought up on the broadcast the other day, but I'll try to get it in short and sweet terms. You know how lots of times in the past, Jim, NBA playoff series, somebody wins, say, in 4 or 5, and they're sitting and waiting for their next opponent. And lots of times in the NBA, a team will win a 7-game series and then only get 1 day in between, right? Say they win on a Saturday. Now they got to play Monday night against a team that's been sitting there for 5 days waiting. Think about this. And now almost always it's the higher seeded team. Like the 1 seed will be sitting waiting for the 4 or 5 winner. Well, in this case, think about what happened. The Milwaukee Bucks, now, the whole Black Lives Matter and the protests and whatnot, and the players boycotting the games, whatever, for a couple of days last week. The Bucks were really the leaders in that, as everyone has pointed out. It was them that did not come on the court to play Orlando, which is fine. Everything that's over and done with. But the Bucks, meanwhile, shorted themselves because they wound up having to play Saturday and wrapped up that series with the Magic, and then they got put back on the court to start the next series against the lowest seeded Heat. And I watched much of that game, and the Heat's legs were fresher, and the Bucks were a little slow to get back. Like you said, Butler had 40 points in that game. There were a few times they were very slow to get back on defense. And I said, I can't think of another time where the higher seeded team kind of got penalized by NBA scheduling because they had to play with just 1 day in between winning one series and starting another. But hey, because they've got to get these games in, and we had that 3-day break with the protests last week, that the Bucks, who were the trailblazers of not the team trail, but the team that led the charge, they wound up really suffering for it. Anyway, now they got to dig themselves out of a hole. As you said, you don't have home court, so it's not like they have to go to Miami to play games 3 and 4 eventually. But still, when you're down in a series, okay, Denver dug their way out from down 3-1, but it takes a lot to dig out, and if the Bucks wind up getting down 2-0 or 3-2. I wonder if they've got it in them. The Heat seems to be a tough matchup anyway on paper for Milwaukee, the way this match up here. And so I'm wondering if maybe for all the people that picked the Bucks to get out of the East, the schedule maker, as it turned out, might have hurt them here more than we realized. As far as the Celtics, we're seeing really the coming of age of a guy like Jason Tatum. He had a couple of bad moments early in these playoffs, and then he's been just out of this world great. And switching over to the West, I agree with you. The Clippers are the best team that's standing. Kawhi Leonard, they could talk about all these other players. Kawhi Leonard is the biggest winner in the NBA. I mean, he's a champion. He's won for a couple of teams. He's just a great player. I know he doesn't have some pizzazz of a personality when they interview him. I mean, he doesn't excite people, but boy, he is such a, I categorize guys as winners, champions, whatever. I mean, he's a champion. That's all there is to it. And and it's not like he has to carry that whole team. They've got talent, and it looks like Paul George is going to come around a little bit. So I like them. The Lakers, to me, are the biggest question mark. I don't really know always what to make of them. Sometimes, the game one against Portland, they really kind of didn't show up late. And as great as LeBron and Anthony Davis are as a tandem, I really wonder if we get a deep series here with the Clippers, if lack of depth is going to hurt the Lakers here. So at this point, as we stand here on this Wednesday, I think we're going to see a Clippers Celtics final going forward. I don't trust the Bucks, even if they can come back and win the series, which obviously they're only down 1-0. But I just think right now the Celtics are just gelling, just fantastic, and obviously the coach, you got to love him. And that would be my long-range thing for now. Before this playoff started, I thought the Clippers were a tad better than the Lakers. I'm starting to think they're a little bit more than a tad better right now. And if I had to put my money, I think the Clippers are going to win this whole thing.
Joe, I appreciate everything. We're at that mark where I have a limit in how much I can record. So I'm going to close this off. We're going to do another podcast early next week, or maybe the end of this week, and we're going to cover a little bit more football. But thank you again, Joe. I appreciate it. Everybody can go to Twitter, Facebook, and find our stuff, and follow this on JimFeist.com. And we'll be back with more podcasts throughout the season. Thanks, Joe. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Jim. Stay well. Bye-bye.
You too, buddy.